My father never told me what he expected, not directly. That's not how it works in royal families. Expectations are implied, demonstrated, absorbed through observation, but they're absolute, and I learned early what was expected of me. Not through words, through silence, through what was praised and what was ignored, through what was allowed and what was quietly corrected. Today, I'm going to list what my father expected me to sacrifice, not as accusation, but as inventory, because understanding what was expected is the only way to understand what I gave up and what giving it up cost. The core expectation was simple: sacrifice everything personal for the role. Everything, not most things, not the big things, everything. Personal desires, personal relationships, personal happiness, personal choice. All of it was secondary to duty, always. That was the foundational expectation. Never stated, but absolute. My father lived that way. He sacrificed personal happiness for the role. He fulfilled duty without visible complaint. He performed strength regardless of what he felt. And he expected me to do the same, not because he was cruel, but because that's what the role requires. And he raised me to fulfill the role, not to be happy, not to be fulfilled, to be functional, and function requires sacrifice, constant total sacrifice. That was the expectation. Now let me show you what that actually meant, what specifically I was expected to give up. The first sacrifice was obvious. I was expected to sacrifice personal choice in marriage, not choice completely. I could have said no to a specific person, theoretically, but I couldn't choose for myself. I couldn't bring someone and say, this is who I want, especially not someone outside the system, especially not someone unknown, especially not someone I loved. That choice, the choice of who to spend my life with, that was never mine. It belonged to the family, to strategy, to alliances. I was expected to accept whoever was chosen, without resistance, without negotiation, without expressing what I actually wanted, and I did. When they chose my cousin, when they arranged the marriage, when they set the timeline, I accepted, not because I agreed, but because refusing wasn't an option. That was the first sacrifice, the sacrifice of choosing my partner, of building a marriage based on connection, not arrangement, of experiencing love freely. My father expected that sacrifice, and I gave it without fight, without complaint, because that's what was expected, and meeting expectations was the only approval available. The second sacrifice was more painful. I was expected to sacrifice her, the woman I actually loved, the one I chose, the one who mattered. My father never said end it. He didn't have to. His disapproval was enough. The moment he became aware of the relationship, the pressure began. Not direct pressure, structural pressure. My schedule tightened, my availability shrank. The spaces where the relationship existed disappeared. And when the arranged marriage was announced, the message was clear. That relationship, that real, chosen, meaningful relationship had to end. There was no negotiation. No, but I love her. No consideration of what I wanted, just expectation. End it, move on, fulfill the arrangement. And I did. I ended it. I let her go. I accepted the loss because my father expected that sacrifice, expected me to prioritize duty over desire, structure over connection, arrangement over authenticity. And I gave him that sacrifice, not willingly, but completely. That was the second sacrifice. The relationship that actually mattered, the love that felt real, the person who saw me as human, all of it sacrificed because that's what was expected. The third sacrifice was subtler. I was expected to sacrifice emotional expression, to never show weakness, to never admit struggle, to never reveal that the weight was unbearable. My father never showed emotion, not anger, not sadness, not vulnerability. He performed composure constantly, and he expected the same from me. When I was hurting, I couldn't show it. When I was grieving the relationship I lost, I couldn't express it. When I was drowning under pressure, I couldn't admit it. I was expected to bury all of that, to perform strength, to project confidence, to function, regardless of what I felt. And I did. I learned to compartmentalize, to separate feeling from function, to carry pain silently, to smile through grief, to maintain composure while breaking inside. That was the third sacrifice, the sacrifice of being human visibly, of expressing what I felt, of asking for help when I needed it. My father expected emotional discipline, and I gave it to him. I became what he needed, strong, disciplined, controlled, and completely hollow. Because emotion that's never expressed doesn't disappear. It just accumulates until you forget what feeling freely even feels like. That's what that sacrifice cost. My ability to be vulnerable, to connect emotionally, to exist as a full human, not just a function. The fourth sacrifice was autonomy. I was expected to sacrifice independence, not complete independence, but the independence to make decisions without approval, to choose my own path, to define my own priorities. Every major decision in my life required his approval, implicit or explicit. Where I went, who I saw, what I prioritized, all of it filtered through his expectations. I wasn't allowed to develop independently, to make mistakes privately, to learn through experience. Every choice was observed, every deviation questioned, every moment of independence seen as potential rebellion. So I learned to seek approval, to check before acting, to prioritize his expectations over my own judgment. That was the fourth sacrifice. The sacrifice of becoming my own person, of trusting my own decisions, of building confidence through autonomy. Instead, I became an extension of his vision, a continuation of his values, a mirror of his priorities. Not my own person, just a refined version of him. And in becoming that, I lost the ability to know who I actually am, beneath the expectations, beneath the training, beneath the role. I don't know who I am independently, because independence was sacrificed long ago. The fifth sacrifice was possibility. I was expected to sacrifice the future I imagined, the one where my life was mine, where I made choices freely, where happiness was achievable. When I was younger, I imagined different futures, futures where I could choose, where I could build something personal, where my life included more than duty. Those futures felt possible, briefly, until they didn't, until I understood that my future was already written, already decided, already locked. I was expected to accept that, to stop imagining alternatives, to stop hoping for something different, to accept that my life would follow the script written before I was born. And I did. I stopped imagining. I stopped hoping. I stopped believing that my life could include anything I chose. That was the fifth sacrifice. The sacrifice of possibility, of hope for a different life, of belief that the future was open. My father expected me to accept inevitability. And I did, not because I agreed with it, but because resisting it was pointless. So I gave up possibility and accepted the predetermined path. And I've walked that path ever since, without deviation, without hope for anything different, without belief that choice exists. That's what sacrificing possibility costs. It kills hope. And without hope, you're just surviving, not living, just surviving. There was one more expectation, the deepest one, the one never stated but always implied. I was expected to sacrifice resentment, to give up everything and not be bitter about it, to sacrifice love, choice, emotion, independence, possibility, and still function with loyalty, to lose everything personal and remain devoted to the role. That was the unspoken expectation, not just sacrifice, but graceful sacrifice, sacrifice without complaint, sacrifice without visible cost. My father expected me to become him, someone who sacrificed everything and never showed the weight, never questioned the system, never resented the loss, just functioned perfectly, permanently. And I've tried. I've sacrificed everything he expected. I functioned without visible complaint. I've maintained loyalty. But the resentment, I haven't sacrificed that. I carry it quietly, not toward him specifically, toward the system, toward the structure that demands everything and offers nothing personal in return. That resentment, silent, constant resentment, that's the one sacrifice I couldn't make, even though it was expected. There's one more thing, something my father didn't expect me to sacrifice, but I lost anyway, myself. He expected me to sacrifice personal desires. He expected me to sacrifice the relationship. He expected me to sacrifice emotion, independence, possibility. But he didn't expect me to lose myself completely. He thought I could maintain a core, a sense of self beneath the role. But I couldn't, because sacrificing everything personal means there's nothing personal left. I don't know who I am anymore, separate from the role. I don't know what I want, what I value, what makes me happy. All of that, the core of identity, got sacrificed too. Not because it was expected, but because it was inevitable. When you give up everything that makes you you, eventually there's no you left. Just the role, just the function, just the performance. And that loss, the loss of self, that's the one my father didn't anticipate. He thought I could be crown prince and still be me, but you can't. Not when the role demands everything. Not when sacrifice is total. You become the role, and the person you were disappears. That's what wasn't expected, but happened anyway. What did my father expect me to sacrifice? Everything. Personal choice in marriage, sacrificed the relationship that mattered, sacrificed emotional expression, sacrificed independence, sacrificed the future I imagined, sacrificed, and the unspoken expectation that I'd sacrifice without resentment. I gave him all of that, not because I agreed, but because refusing meant losing everything else. So I sacrificed completely, totally. And in the process, I sacrificed something he didn't expect, myself. The person I was beneath the expectations. That person is gone, replaced by the crown prince, the role, the function. And I live now as that role, without personal desire, without connection, without hope, without self. That's what my father expected me to sacrifice. And I gave it all, because that's what sons do. When duty is the only language spoken, when love is conditional on compliance, when approval requires erasure, you sacrifice everything until nothing personal remains. If you've ever given up everything to meet someone's expectations, you understand. Sacrifice isn't noble when it's total. It's just loss, complete, irreversible loss of everything that made you human.